Hi, and welcome to Mad River Reality. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends at Bourne's Energy. Hi, I'm Eric Friedman. I'm the Executive Director of the Mad River Valley Chamber of Commerce, and we're here today talking about lodging and the pandemic. And we have Kim Donahue from the Round Barn, and we also have Farrell and Sean Kramer from the 1824 House. Great to be here, guys.
Great to have you.
And thanks so much for having us up here, this beautiful location. Do you always have this furniture out here?
We do not. We did bring it up for the special occasion, but we didn't get many weddings this year, so we thought we needed to use the space for something.
Well, we're here to talk about how lodging has been impacted by this whole pandemic thing. It's been impacted a little, huh?
Well, just a little.
Just a tiny bit.
Yeah, Kim, you want to tell us a little bit about how kind of things went down back in March and kind of set the scene for what happened within this sector of the economy?
Sure.
Eric, before we get going, are you comfortable with? We're far enough apart, I think, being outside.
I think so.
I think we're good.
And the wind is blowing that way.
and we're already together, so we can't hurt.
So I guess it was that second weekend in March. It was the weekend of St. Patrick's Day, right?
Yes.
When we were all sort of understanding how COVID was starting to unfold, and things started to unfold kind of at a fever pitch, much like they're doing again right now.
Yep.
And we got word shortly thereafter that from the governor that the state of Vermont was imposing a stay home, stay safe order, and that all leisure travel was hereby canceled, and that the lodging sector was responsible to shut down all lodging in the state of Vermont so that we could make sure that we were taking care of our own Vermonters and not welcoming anybody from out of state. At that point, even essential workers wasn't really even anything that was on the table at that point.
And Kim, excuse me, but at that time we actually had to shut down all lodging.
Yes.
So even in Vermont was not allowed to come. We were not allowed to take any future reservations.
Right.
It was actually a complete standstill, so that was even before the mandate to start letting people in and things like that.
Yep, Sean's absolutely right. And not only that, but although all businesses needed to close at that time, we, the lodging sector, were the lucky ones that actually received visits from the state police and from sheriffs, and we were actually surveilled to be sure that we were not operating.
Actually, and that you were harboring.
Yeah, harboring guests.
Harboring guests.
And we weren't. So that brought us to shutting down and needing to figure out what was going to come next.
Yeah, and that was pretty tough. I mean, we were right in the middle of the kind of the height of the ski season. Spring was coming up.
I mean, it was the weekend of March 15th. I remember we were full, and we came down in the morning, and it went from Killington is closing to everybody's closing. And so guests were expecting to go out skiing that day. They had their gear on, and they were at breakfast, and then nothing. They said, I think we're just going to go home. And then it turned out they had to, but it was interesting though that just the way it kind of unfolded. It was just so quick, and then once again to then find out that we couldn't even take future bookings. We were really in uncertain territory of what we were going to be allowed to do for the future. Right. Which was really difficult.
That was really hard, the future part of it, because that's future bookings is cash flow that we depend on to get us through those weak times. So not being able to say take a booking for foliage season in March, which happens a lot. When travel is top of mind, we're taking reservations for September, for October, for August, for July, and there were no real, true, fast other rules to explain it. It was just no reservations. So we weren't certain whether we were going to be able to sell weddings, whether we were actually able to book any of the lodging for weddings, for events that were going to take place 8-9 months down the road, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And not knowing with those weddings, once again, we both host weddings, trying to explain to brides and grooms and parents of brides and grooms that, well, we just don't know.
Right.
So the uncertainty was probably the toughest part at that point. Not really being able to give any information to our potential guests.
One of the things that really struck me when this thing was going down, and in my position as director of the chamber, was how willing the lodging sector was that you guys got it. It was
Oh,
not
yeah.
like there was any fight to it.
No.
And you were, appreciative, I think, of what the government was trying to do. And is that pretty accurate?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that because, and so many of us with kind of our sized establishments, again, we live on site. These are our homes. This is, that we, welcome strangers all the time, but all of a sudden there is this new aspect to that potential stranger that, okay, let's take a moment,
Right.
take a breath, and let's see what's going to happen. So, I think a lot of us were on board.
So Farrell, tell me about kind of what happened. And you guys host weddings here. So as you got into the spring and started heading towards the summer, you must have been a little antsy with weddings and whatnot. And
it was. I think that that springtime again, that great period of uncertainty, that we weren't getting specific directives from the government yet at this point, but weddings take a long time to coordinate and organize, and everyone has spent a long time on this. So, our June weddings, as we were kind of coming up to the 0 hour on those, where we had to make some decisions, and we had nothing concrete to give anyone. And so it was a lot of heartbreaking conversations with those looking to get married, to be like, I don't know what's going to go on. We don't know what's happening. We don't know. But
so those of us that are married, was there a silver lining? Like, this is good, folks. Like, you have no idea the reprieve.
Trust me, just
There's lots of joy that happens here.
Yeah.
But, to Farrell's point, wedding invitations go out between 8 and 12 weeks prior to the date, and March 15th was prime time for June 15th wedding.
Yeah.
I mean, we like to have all of the details buttoned up by 90 days, not their final number, but certainly every detail is buttoned up by 90 days. That means rentals, that means lodging for all of their guests, because remember, while we can only house 24 or 30 people on our properties, there's 150 people that are coming for the wedding. So it's not just one property that's impacted by one wedding. There's 3 or 4 properties that are impacted by one wedding, at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I want to keep in mind in this conversation is, I mean, you both have properties at 1824 House and Round Barn that are wedding places, or wedding venues. I want to make sure that we really talk about the other inns and lodges and bed and breakfasts here, and how they are reliant in the summer of how big the wedding industry is in this community.
Well, the whole valley is really, I mean, it's the lodging community, it's the restaurants, it's the retail. It all comes together.
Yeah, the farmers market.
The farmers market. I mean, it all plays in, and weddings are only one portion of that, but it's a big portion, of course, and it trickles down at that point to all these other places. And I will say one good thing is, the chamber really stepped up though and got our lodging community together right at the beginning. I mean, it was, the end of March, and we were already having weekly meetings, and that.
I've seen enough of you people.
I'm sure.
Well,
but that helped. That really helped us all connect. And get to say, okay, Kim, what are you guys doing? All right, what's 1824 doing? And then talking to the other lodging establishments that maybe just had overflow guests or something like that. But to say, okay, well wait, did they call you? Because we know that was canceled, or that's going to happen, or we know what's happening. And they didn't, some brides and grooms weren't able to get the information because they weren't certain to their guests to then get to the next person, to the next person, to back to the other lodges. Right. So it was actually nice that we were able to connect.
We coordinated calendars.
Together.
It was really awesome. But even if the people aren't coming here for a wedding, when you're talking about 90 days out from our guests that are visiting us from the West Coast for the summer or from Florida for the summer, they've got non-refundable plane tickets,
Yeah.
And there are lots of travel. There's lots of travel coordination that has to take place, even for leisure travel, especially for leisure travel. So, it was a really remarkable thing to be able to unite the lodging community so that we could use each other for moral support.
Probably first and
There's a lot of that.
First and
A lot of
foremost, moral support.
taking place.
Yeah.
But then also, as we started to transition into reopening or to welcoming guests again, man, that support and that conference was just invaluable in order to, make a united front on how we as a valley were going to welcome guests back and keep our town safe, to keep our valley safe,
Right.
as well as keep our guests safe.
Yeah, which brings up a point. I was curious, what was the reaction of the rest of the community here in terms of when we started welcoming guests back? And when was that? That was like in
June, right?
June.
Late
It was June
June.
15th.
Yeah.
It was actually
the
almost
spigot
exactly.
was turned a little
Yeah.
The
bit.
first spigot was turned, and that was
May.
just Vermont
Yep.
was allowed to join us. So I think at that point everyone was kind of like, well, they're Vermont. We're pretty clean at that point. We didn't know too much still.
It's clean.
That's the best I got. But I think that the next, when we started getting out-of-state guests, I think the community was a little bit hesitant. You definitely started hearing about people complaining about the license plates. I think was kind of the trigger that no one knew where they were staying, who they were. Getting back into the local grocery stores and seeing them there, seeing people there that you don't see on a regular basis. So you we all get to know the locals, and you're like, I haven't seen that person before. What's going on? I think there's a little unrest amongst the communities, but I think we as a lodging community really were committed to following the rules in this area, and that I think put our communities at ease. That we were, when it came to signing papers and making sure they were coming from the right places. I think we did as best as we could, and I think that did put overall the community at ease a little bit.
So when we were able to welcome guests again, we were given the responsibility of asking our guests to comply to the state of Vermont's travel guidelines and to certify that they were complying with those guidelines. And this was the only sector that was charged with that responsibility. Mm-hmm. So in a way, we did become the health ambassadors for the state of Vermont. Mm-hmm. We were screening guests, and we were doing our very best to make sure that we were educating the guests who wanted to come.
And educating was really, really
Yeah.
a big part of it.
Yeah, and it's pretty antithetical of what you normally do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, normally you get a call and you're like, how do we get you in?
Yeah.
Right.
And this was well, you really can't come.
So tell me where you're from.
Tell me a little bit about you.
See by your area code that you...
Yeah, I mean, we joke about that, but
Yeah.
that
No,
was
but
pretty messed up. I remember thinking, like, this is so opposite of what
Yeah.
you folks normally do. And, I mean, what was that experience like?
Well,
it's still difficult.
Yeah,
What was it
hasn't
like?
gotten
It
any
is
easier.
like. It's really difficult. You get a lot of angry emails and phone calls back from people. And all we're doing is explaining. These are the rules. Are you able to meet them? And well, I didn't know about. I'm sorry you didn't know about it. But I haven't taken any money. It's okay. You haven't lost anything. There's no deposit. So the uncertainty that they had, they kind of thought we were being rude when we were just trying to educate and make sure they understood. And I mean, a lot of people really did go, oh, I just didn't know, and thank you for letting me know. And they, went somewhere else, unfortunately. But it was hard, and it's still hard when you're turning away business, when you know you have an empty room. I mean, it's really frustrating. And obviously, we were already closed for so many months, and we're still basically closed. And unfortunately, the spigot went backwards today for lodging, and it's really hard to just tell people no.
Yeah.
It's not in our makeup as innkeepers.
No, it's really not. And it's not even about the dollars. It's not even about that. It's hard to not take money that someone wants to give you. Okay? I mean, it's hard to say
We all
no,
like to do
no.
that. Please don't.
No, please. But it's really not even about that. It's really about, seeing my neighbor and saying, my gosh, I can't possibly put them at risk. I can't possibly let them go to the grocery store. So it's this thing, what we tried to do when we were actually able to bring guests back, I think all of us tried to balance what we would normally do with hospitality, which is basically anything that needs to be done. We are at your service, happily. And then to have to gate the people who are coming here, but then once they get here, we've had to change everything that we do.
Yeah,
We've had to change
that
everything.
was what really struck me in those lodging meetings. The discussions about how are you serving coffee,
Exactly.
and how are you doing the laundry, and real mundane things that I didn't really think twice about, but because you guys live it every day.
But everyone has a different comfort level as well.
Yep.
So every business is slightly different. I mean, we're all inns or lodging establishments, but how we were already designed and how the flow of our guests kind of went in our buildings was all very different.
Very
And
different.
so even though we definitely gave each other ideas and talked through it, some ideas just didn't work at our facility, or it didn't work at Kim's and or others, and that's where you just had to kind of own it, what you really felt comfortable doing at your place, and not always easy. And once again, like getting coffee, I mean, it's a weird thing that we used to have our guests come in and they'd, I'm cooking breakfast. Oh, help yourself to coffee, and I'll, we'll have a seat and we'll be with you. And now it's like, well, don't touch that. We'll come over and get it for you. Please have a seat over there. Nope, not next to them. Over there, and
Don't forget to wash your hands.
Yeah, and having sanitizer everywhere. Realizing, and granted, now most people have it in their car and at their homes, but every door, every entrance to a room, it's everywhere. And you start noticing if people are using it, not using it. And
Little things like having slippers at the front door for the winter time, which is something,
took ours away.
it's a lovely, cozy little touch, but there's no way I'm putting slippers out at the door now. There's no way anybody in their right mind would put them on. But
yep, that box just went away.
And then you also can't. We're discouraged from entering guests' rooms, so that meant no more turn down service or modified turn down service of some sort.
Yeah.
There's no makes in the morning, so you have to find a whole new way to get people fresh towels if they need them, or there were no restaurants open, or they were open for takeout. So now not only do we have like the regular trash that people generate, that we all generate on a regular basis, but now we have all their takeout trash that's also in their rooms. I mean, and these things sound really silly, but the waste baskets that we have in bedrooms are this big.
Yeah.
They don't hold a takeout container.
No.
So we had to find new ways to address everything. Our dining areas are limited to 50% capacity, up to 75 people. Well, I can tell you, we can have 12. So 75 is not a problem.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about
that. We don't have to worry about that. But what do I do with the other 12 guests? How do I hold them off? Now I have to have a reservation system for breakfast, and that's just not a mechanism that we had in place, right?
Right. Well, that, or we have to remove these tables so no one sits at them.
Right.
Well,
Where do you put
where
them?
do you put them?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
we all kind of use all our storage as best we
Yep.
can already, and so all of a sudden it's like, well, let me see if I can fit this over here now, and so the flow of your dining room gets wonky, and the flow of your living room, because you start adding furniture over there, but you really don't want people congregating in there either.
Right, but nobody can sit around the fire anymore.
Yes,
So
No, and it's interesting. I mean, again, listening to these lodging meetings every week was really eye-opening to me. And as long as I've been in this community, and I've been working here, and I've worked at Mad River for 24 years, and always talking to the lodge owners, and I got a really good sense of it over the years. Like, this is a tough business, and the margins are not great. And then I'm thinking, okay, you guys are doing all of this extra stuff for 25% or 50%, and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way anyone's making any money here.
I mean, no. I mean, your mortgage is still due. You still have to have the heat on. You still have to,
not only that, the age of your property is in your name, 1824, and let's just talk about the fixed costs that come along, or the unexpected
costs, probably even worse,
that have to be addressed.
Yeah.
With a house that was built in 1824, or a barn that was built in 1910.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're getting them probably at the end of a lot of the life cycle of their mechanicals. So you're talking about. It rained in our barn the other day because there's a hole. Fortunately, that was just coming through the silo, through the open windows, but
But you didn't know that.
But
That
I
was
didn't
the
know
worst
that
part.
then. I didn't know that at that moment.
At that moment, you thought the whole roof was gone.
Oh gosh. You know, or no, we're having to turn the heat on right now.
Yep.
Well, everybody knows that the heat only gets turned on when, you know, Chuck Casikio is at his deer camp and we have to call him down from his deer camp to help turn the boiler on or the furnace on because it doesn't work the first time. Or the first time that you have guests after being dormant for 16 weeks, there's no hot water. Of course.
Or you have to go through that room again just because it's been sitting so long. They're like, wow, I just have to reclean this. It's just not ready.
Right.
Yeah. And then the other thing that kind of struck me was the whole laundry thing, and I just remember the travails of Willie Doctor over at Moose Meadow.
Oh, poor Willie.
Like this, you know,
I mean, we're all doing more and more laundry.
Of course, his laundry facility, you know, his washing machine broke down.
Not one, both, right?
Right, and then he
Oh,
couldn't
poor
get
thing.
anyone to fix it, and he's like living at the laundromat in Waterbury, and the amount of laundry, and again, it's like, how do you guys do this?
It's staggering.
Crazy.
I thought I was kind of very impressed with, again, with our community as a whole, that again, when we were trying to figure out how to safely serve breakfast to our guests, how do we get guests in and out of our rooms, the again, margins are thin, but willing to again put in additional infrastructure to again keep our guests safe. Buying individual coffee pots for tables.
Air purifiers.
Air purifiers. Having 3 turns of laundry for, you know, bed sheets for a room, like that, you know, adding cost in that regard again.
Finding sanitizer at the beginning.
Just to keep everyone safe was, and no, you know, everybody had to look at their books, but there was never not that absolute willingness to spend that money to keep people safe when we weren't even having guests that were, you know.
Yeah, and that was for one guest, let alone, I mean, it's not even like we were able to fill there wasn't enough guests coming to the area to fill our inns, but you had to do it for one, so it's for everybody. It's like,
and then so you're just having that expense, and then one of the other things I really noticed was, you know, there was this whole thing was impacting a lot of other people in a lot of other ways, and how the lodging community really stepped up to help out in terms of feeding people and using the, you know, and you guys giving up your kitchens and freezer space to, you know, which is amazing. I mean,
well, and trying to find food for people who did come up finally. I mean, we both added food service that we normally wouldn't do at this time of year, or that time of year. And it was just sheer necessity and trying to bring in any little revenue we could, especially for you guys to keep staff on, you know, to keep people, you know, employed, which is really important
in the valley,
and keep them here, because if they leave to retrain people or if they leave the valley to get someone new that can replace a skilled worker, it's really hard and not very cost effective.
No.
You know, so that's a big problem.
And there were some silver linings to this. At least you can sort of look at it.
I'm going to need to think on that.
Well, for me, I mean, you know, it worked out great for me because, like,
this is good for you.
no, it's seriously, like, it was when you guys started doing food service.
No.
I mean, I don't get to go to the Round Barn very often, except for, you know, weddings and funerals, and at my age, I'm not going to a lot of weddings, But when you guys started doing the food service, like, my family really enjoyed that, and we came a bunch of times, and it was just seeing that beautiful property and coming here for lunch.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And it's a great place to hang out. And
the other silver lining, though, I will say, was the group getting together.
Absolutely,
because
I was gonna say that,
we had, I think, spoken to Kim one time before that. I mean, we were pretty new to the valley still, and I had spoken to a few other innkeepers, and, you know, all of a sudden, we're all looking forward to Thursday at 11 is now like a great time for us all.
I clear the decks no matter what. I even shower for it.
I mean, it's become quite the social hour for us, just to be able to see somebody else and commiserate a little bit. You know, there's been tears shed by all of us at different times, and but also a couple good laughs, and you know, really even asking, you know, so did you get the call from the guy from Wyoming?
Yeah.
You know, just. He still thinks he's coming. Not sure how he's getting here, but, you know, he still thinks he's coming. But, you know, he called us all. He was trying hard.
And I think it was also really great, not just that we were all getting together, but that we were all so willing, especially the veteran innkeepers, that have so many decades of experience doing this. They were so generous of their spirit and of their knowledge in a way that they'd probably always were that generous with it, but there'd never been a vehicle for them to be able to share that.
Right.
And I know, for one, I am indebted to the knowledge that came out of these conversations.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I had had them 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
But,
but I'll tell you wouldn't have, because we've been in this business for a long time. We've been doing this for 20 years. Only our first year here, but anywhere we've been, there's never been a community like this in the end. And it took this tragedy kind of and this pandemic to get it to happen. But anywhere else we've been, it was more of a competition, and you were at each other's throats, and you were very reluctant to send anyone to anybody else. If you were full, you just felt like they might stay with them and continue to be their guest. And now it's just like, oh no, we're full. We're here. Please call one of these guys. Call these guys. What are you looking for?
Great.
They can help.
oh yeah.
Which is just very different than any other lodging sector community that we've ever been in. As far as a group goes. And let's say there weren't always really nice people that we met, but this has really brought us all together, and once again, to help each other out, it's been great.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because that was a big part of what I was trying to do. And one of the things that has come of this too is the retail sector is seeing what you guys have done, and they're like, oh, okay. And this was a group that was talking about herding cats.
Yeah.
These guys really have come together, and we just had a meeting last week, and there were like 17 or 18 retailers there, and that was far and away the largest group. And
That's
the
great.
amount of ideas and the collaboration was really, really great.
And we also know that other chambers in other parts of the state and just other innkeepers are talking about our meetings, that they hear about them. They know what we're doing,
Right.
which is kind of nice. I mean, it's they're looking for that as well, which is kind of nice to hear that we've started something that hopefully has some positive effects later down the road, not just for us but for other people.
Yeah, and which brings up the other thing that I think has come of this, and the way that many in the lodging community have stepped up from a legislative perspective. And one of the things, like, I was hired, for my marketing skills. That's why I was hired. And as much, I'm a history teacher by trade, so I know a little bit about civics and all of that. I thought I knew about lobbying. I had no idea. And I've been schooled on it. And I know that you guys have been at the forefront of it. Peter McLaren from West Hill House has been really, and Willie, Willie Docto from Moose Meadow Lodge. I mean, the amount of hours that you guys have all put in, and the phone calls we've had at ungodly hours. I don't think people necessarily know about that. And who knew that we would have to go to bat for our business community like we did. And if we didn't,
it wouldn't have happened.
It wouldn't have.
Nope.
And money would have gone elsewhere. And there was a lot of money being thrown around, and there wasn't enough for everybody. And we're still going through this today. Do you want to speak to the legislative part of it, and kind of what your takeaway and experience has been?
So the first thing is, I always say, I have gotten a practical civics lesson that I could not have paid for anywhere. The second thing is, Vermont is an amazing place. I came from other places, and even those other places and those small communities that I came from, I could never have had the impact there that we are able to have here with our legislators. They live amongst us.
Yeah.
We know who they are. It's not just a name on a sign. We know them. Our kids go to school with them, and you're dealing with people within your community. But as far as, I never wrote a letter to any of my elected officials or any appointed
I
officials.
had never communicated with a legislator of any sort beyond having a glass of wine at some,
Some
you know,
crappy
function.
chamber mixer.
You know what I mean?
Mixer,
Some
right?
but you know, other than that,
A chamber mixer.
it never happened. You know, and now I think they see my email and kind of just go, oh no.
Yeah, I think Senator Ann Cummings is like, I'm not certain that she's happy she got reelected because she and I have had quite the discourse just this afternoon alone. But the most amazing thing is when you can talk to them about the real need and they can, perception is reality, right? So if their perception is something other than the reality, if you can actually demonstrate the reality, you make a difference. It's astounding to see the difference that one telephone call can make. Yeah. And then when there's 25 or 35 or 105 people that are telling their own stories with the same message, but it's a unique story to every property. It's really quite remarkable, and it really does make you proud to live in this community, but it also makes you proud to be a part of a process.
Yeah, and I've been impressed, just the emails that I've been sending out to our legislators. I hear from them like that.
Yes.
We get a lot of response,
they're very responsive,
great,
unsolicited. They'll send, hey, I'm hearing this. They're telling me about what's going on. I mean, I got a call. I've gotten numerous calls from Adam Gresham, who's the governor's budget director, who lives here in Warren, and he's like, "Hey, dude, I just want to make sure you know this is coming, and make sure your people know about this." And
you're going to see a tweet.
Right. So I mean, it really is. It is really valuable, and I think again, I think that everyone politically, I think everyone comes from a different perspective and is on a different spectrum of things. But one of the things I've gotten, for the most part, is that the legislators and the government, they're trying their best. It's a tough situation. Everyone's hammering them from different angles, and
well, there's need from everywhere, and
right.
there's no question of that. And they're not in an easy position to try to decide some of these questions. But as a lodging community, I know that we've been hit pretty hard, and so we are hoping that the lodging and hospitality community in general will still get some of these funds that are remaining. And I mean,
I think what's interesting though is the hospitality community goes far beyond just lodging. It goes far beyond lodging and restaurants. It goes beyond lodging, restaurants, and events venues. Yeah. There's so many actual tendrils that shoot off from that
florists,
nexus.
Photographers, the food purveyors.
We can't do what we do without them, and they depend on us to have a space to do that. So right now, what we're talking about is, kind of the wedding industry and lodging are sort of intertwined in many ways, in much the same way that the lodging industry and the ski industry are intertwined, just on opposite sides of the the equator, right? So the wedding community recognizes that venues are almost always have lodging attached to them, and if they don't hold up and boost up the lodging properties, there won't be places for DJs to entertain. There won't be places for florists to decorate. There won't be a need for
tent companies, rental companies. Yep. It really goes so far. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yep.
So just today, the governor got rid of our favorite travel map that kept getting redder and redder and redder until it just...
There are officially 2 counties that are able to come.
Okay, where are they?
One in New York and one in Maine.
No, but they're not. But they've abolished that, so they can't come anymore.
So it doesn't matter now. But officially on the map, there are 2 counties that are green.
Well, that's not true. So they can still come here, but they are subject to quarantine with no question.
Absolutely.
With no question. But
no longer today.
If I were betting, I would bet that that's going to be a topic of conversation for future press media briefings.
No, that went away today. It officially, those green counties still have to quarantine.
But everybody has to quarantine.
Yes, correct. Yeah, okay.
So I have to be honest and say, you heard it here first. We're closed for the balance of November, and we're probably going to wipe off our December reservations as well, because it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. It's going to hurt not to have Christmas week. Christmas week kicks
Oh,
off
it's
the
a
winter
big-
season. It's going to be awful. But it's the right thing to do for our community. There's no option. So even if people are telling us that they're quarantining, they have the best they have their best intentions. They really do. All right, not all of them. But many of them have our best interest at heart, but they don't understand what quarantine means.
Going to the grocery store,
Is not
going to work,
quarantining.
not quarantining.
Picking up your kid from daycare, your kid going to daycare, your kid going to school, not quarantining.
Yeah, it's
Working from home, yes, but if all of those other things are happening, no. So I think we've all sat down and done this at any certain point, and we've said, okay, if something were to have happened here, let's go back and see how many people we would have to get in touch with to tell them that there was a case that was here during the time that they were here. And let me just tell you, that is a sobering exercise, and it makes the decision to just shut down without the governor having to tell us to shut down. It makes that decision a no-brainer.
Yeah. So as you're looking towards the winter, I mean, it's kind of weird. You're sitting here on this nice summer day, November 10th. What are you thinking about the winter as you think about that? And what do you think the rest of the lodging community is thinking about?
Scared, I'll be honest. With the new rules that have been put into the ski community, the resorts, of their having to figure out a way to have compliance certificates or check marks or whatever it is, very difficult. Really difficult, and really difficult to make plans. And then if you're not making plans, what are the odds you were quarantining? Because it's a great snow weekend and it's coming, that's usually when those rooms fill up. And if people can't just jump in their car and come, or can't do it legally or the right way, it's really difficult. We used to love to get a walk-in off the street, or somebody just drives up and it's just like, we went skiing today, and it was,
we decided to stay.
We decided to stay, and we're going to ski tomorrow. And you're like, great, I have a room. This is wonderful. And now it's kind of like, keep driving, please.
Yeah.
And so I am a little scared. I'll be honest, if we're going to really close down, I'd rather do it right now, as far as even the state goes, and just really shut down so that when winter truly comes, when it is December, January, that maybe we can be a couple steps ahead. I never want to shut down officially, and I don't want anyone else's, business to have be closer to what we are right now. But stick season is the time compared to the middle of the winter, when we're all hoping to start generating revenue again.
Well, so if we do it now, and we stay closed through, even if we don't stay closed through Christmas week, but if you think of somebody coming here for Christmas week, they have to start quarantining on December 15th or sooner, December 10th, really, if they're going to be here for Christmas, or maybe even earlier in December if they want to come prior to Christmas. And people aren't doing that math. So let's do that math for what it looks like for, let's say, Martin Luther King weekend, right?
Yeah. Which is a big weekend here.
Right.
I mean,
you have to start quarantining right after New Year's if you're thinking about coming here for Martin Luther King weekend, which is big. This is really, really big. So it's kind of like in the beginning when we were talking about flattening the curve, and Vermont did such an amazing job of just tamping it down and flattening that curve. Mm-hmm. If we do that now, then we have a chance for January.
Yep. And then that's all well and good, but the thing is that people have to think about is, with the restrictions on the ski areas, they might not be able to buy lift tickets.
Right.
And their limited capacity and all of that.
And with that though, we're asking people to buy tickets now at the ski areas because they have to have a dated ticket. They can't just buy a 4-pack or whatever it might be. So they have to choose now a date in advance that they may or may not be able to do this. It's really difficult. I mean, we're asking a lot of travelers to do something that they're really not used to doing for this. Right. If you were, for Americans going to Europe or to, Africa or South America, you planned ahead, you booked well in advance typically, you maybe even use a travel agent to help you get all your
skiing's
pieces.
a little different.
Skiing is not quite that way, and especially skiing in the east.
Coming
where
up from Boston.
We're coming up from Boston. We're coming up from New York, New Jersey.
We heard it's going to snow.
The forecast looks great, and I want to beat it, so I'm coming up. And that's where it's going to be a different winter here.
Yeah,
and difficult.
I had conversations just today with John Hammond over at Sugarbush and Matt over at Mad River, and getting a sense of what they're saying. And I mean, I was so heartened to hear that they know, like, we're a vector, like we're the ones that they're coming to us because they want to go skiing, and that we are bringing the potential hazard to our community. And I don't want to do this to my, these people go to school with my kids. These people,
our kids are in the same schools as their kids,
right.
Absolutely, and
they get it.
They do get it.
They really
Absolutely.
do, and it's making them sick.
But this is where they've been dealing with a lot of these things. They've been, but they've been closed because of the time of year where we've been dealing with this the whole time.
Yep.
And I don't wish it on anyone, so I feel terrible for them because I know how they feel. But we see them in, Shaw's, Maharans. We see them. We know what it's like to go in, and none of us want to do that to the community.
Right.
And that's why we're all trying to take the precautions that we can and do as best we can all the way around.
Yeah.
It's really difficult, though. So hopefully, we're all hoping for a good season, though. I mean, it's...
Yeah, and I think that one of the other things that I got from them also is that they feel like it's important for them to be open because for mental health reasons for locals. I mean, so many of us are here because of the skiing, and
Absolutely.
And for us not to be able to go, like...
I mean, a lot of us live in Vermont because of that reason. It's not a question.
Not me, so I'll just be making you all sandwiches.
It's all good. It's all good. But no, it's hopefully this winter we can get things under control and make it happen, though.
Yeah. And I think one of the, these episodes normally we try to do 20 minutes or so, and I know we've gone a lot longer than that. But I really think it's important. I wanted to go longer because I think our community needs to know how seriously this sector takes it, and the interrelationships that we have with the other sectors and all of that. So this is not, I think that people should understand that they're not sitting there. Kim's not sitting at the round barn and saying like, "Oh my God, I'm losing this revenue." Like, I'm sure you are, but
I am.
But there's a lot bigger pieces to it, though.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Look, we've all this giant civics lesson that we've gotten. We've all also seen now the impact of the impact on the community of whether our particular property thrives or not. So if you were to take any one of the lodging properties out of the equation for even just property taxes in this valley,
it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. To talk about the rooms and meals tax, the dependency on the rooms and meals tax from the state of Vermont for their revenue, it's remarkable. The dollars are just,
not there.
It's crazy, but it's gone. And when you look at what that funds, there's a greater responsibility that we have to making sure it's not just welcoming guests, it's not just keeping our community safe. Those are, first and foremost. But when you look downstream, it's the economic health of the state if we, survive or not. When the Vermont Association of Wedding Professionals did kind of an informal impact study, and the number is staggering. Weddings in Vermont are as almost as big as the dairy industry in Vermont. And that's really saying something. And that's one of those industries, like I said, that there's a little tip on the of an island out in the ocean, or I guess I should do a skiing analogy, but it's like the peak of a mountain, and then when you go underneath of it, it's like this giant glacier underneath of the water that you just don't think about. Of so many industries that
rely on
us, and that's a huge sense of responsibility for us. But another thing that's really important for us to, you just alluded to it, is that just because we have opened up, or just because we had opened up, or just because maybe we're shifting to doing something else that's feeding the community or feeding the visitors that are able to come here, or the second homeowners that don't know about all of the resources that are available here, we're all doing it differently. And we're considering every single facet of the way that we touch consumers, the way that they experience an interaction with us. So we're never going back to doing things the way that they were done before, right? So even when we do open up, we do want the community to have confidence and know that we have their best interest at heart, and that we're changing the way that we do everything to be safe. It's not ever going to be business as usual ever again.
No.
And I also think the silver lining is I think some of the changes that are being made
Yes.
in all the different sectors of the
Yes.
economy, I think are going to be good in a lot
I
of ways.
think there's a lot
Yeah.
that will stick, that people realize that it
Yeah.
was important all the way around. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, and I guess we don't have to get back to guests anytime soon, right?
And we hardly even needed you to moderate
Right.
this. We could just talk.
Yeah.
No, but I appreciate your time and this great location here, and
It's
Thank
so
you.
beautiful.
Yes.
yeah, and
It's
thanks to Mad
gorgeous.
River TV for making this happen.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.